Hello and welcome back to the Podawakens Star Wars fan podcast. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and we're going to be recapping all of the celebration news that came out last weekend at Star Wars Celebration London 2023. There is a lot to discuss from this celebration. We had movie announcements, we'll get to those. We had a trailer, we had some comments from Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni that we'll get to as well. And just, little updates on some other stuff that we'll get to as well. But it was a pretty full celebration. I have a picture here that I want to share as well as the Star Wars timeline. They put this up here. Let me pull that up. So they showed this timeline at Star Wars Celebration here. They put it up here. Some people took some screenshots of it. So we actually have it. I'm hoping they release it officially at some point because I really dig it. It of course starts with Dawn of the Jedi here, then the Old Republic, the High Republic, Fall of the Jedi, is that Reign of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, the New Republic, Rise of the First Order, and the New Jedi Order. Yeah, there was also something I had here as well, because some people were like, hey, Fall of the Jedi, Reign of the Empire is pretty much the same thing. I know there was a lot of talk about that, but there was this cool graphic that they released a few years ago. I forget when it was. I think it was during the High Republic stream. But during the High Republic stream a few years ago... Oh, I found it. Okay, so during the original High Republic stream, when they announced it all and they were saying where it takes place on the timeline, that was the furthest back they went, was the High Republic. And in the Fall of the Jedi, there is the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Clone Wars, and Revenge of the Sith. Reign of the Empire focuses pretty much solely on Bad Batch and Solo, a Star Wars story, while Age of Rebellion starts with Rebels, Rogue One, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. The New Republic was The Mandalorian, and then Rise of the First Order included Resistance, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. So I understand some people, because this is probably the most that the timeline has gotten a big upgrade, and the most that people have studied it for quite a while. So I kind of understand people being like, wait, what is the difference between Fall of the Jedi and Reign of the Empire? It's because I also saw some people calling it Rise of the Empire, kind of confusing with Rise of the First Order, and I think that is kind of where it came in, because if it was Rise of the Empire, you'd think, yes, that would be during like the prequels, or at least Revenge of the Sith onward. But Fall of the Jedi covers the whole prequel trilogy plus Clone Wars. Reign of the Empire is pretty much Bad Batch and Solo, and anything else that's going to take place before Rebels. I'd probably say like Fallen Order, like Jedi Fallen Order is probably in that Reign of the Empire window, stuff like that. So there you have it. So some things that stuck out to me before we really dive into the movies that were announced is this is like the first time I think we've seen the Old Republic on an official timeline for quite a while. Probably since the Disney sale. I can't 100% confirm that, but I believe that they've kind of shied away from that. So there's a few things of what it can mean. I would think with every single timeline here that there is something. Here, let me see if I can do it this way. All right, yes. There is something for each of these topics here that will probably be in the works, is the way I'm thinking of it. So we'll dive into it, but Dawn of the Jedi was announced. That is going to be a movie in this time frame. Old Republic, nothing announced. Now, there's always been rumors of the Old Republic. I think that was the rumors that like Benioff and Weiss were working on. Then there was rumors that this was, they were already writing a script and didn't have a director for the Old Republic. That was years ago, by the way. And that it's like ready to go whenever. That was a rumor. I don't believe that one. And then you could think also that maybe it's just the game, right? We already got confirmation of the remake of Knights of the Old Republic, so maybe they're just putting it up there because of the remake, and that you'd have like the Dawn of the Jedi movie, Old Republic game, High Republic shows and comics and books. We already have Fall of the Jedi, we already have Reign of the Empire, we already have Age of Rebellion, blah, 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 all the way through. So you could say it's like that, or you could just say it is possible that a show or a movie of the Old Republic is also in the works, which would be cool. But kind of one of my worries of that is I wouldn't actually want it to be the plot from the game. And the reason why is because that game, one of the things that makes me love that game is that Revan, Darth Revan, if you want to get into that and all that, but your main character in the story is you, right? You name your character, you have whatever facial features you put in there. You're a smuggler, you're a Jedi, you're whatever you want to be. And the storyline, you have choices on how you want to handle certain things. You can be good, you can be evil. Anything can happen for you. And I think if you try to do that story, the Malik, the Revan, your main character, Karth, all that stuff, if you try to do that story the way it's written in the game, but take away your choices, it's going to divide people. And the reason it's going to divide people is because people are going to look at it and say, that's not how it went for me. Right? I'm currently I've been doing it on stream. I've been, doing it on YouTube. I have to kind of get back at it again. But what I've been doing is a playthrough, a dark side playthrough of Knights of the Old Republic. And it's fun. It's fun. I'm just choosing like every dark option I can. That's great. Not really what I would do if I was playing normally. But that's really cool. If I see that, some people get attached to their playthrough. Their version of their character, the main character, is going to be different than your version of the main character. The choices they made, Did you kill this random person? Or did you save them? Did you force them to pay you? Or did you save them out of the kindness of your heart? Things like that are going to be what sticks with people's memories. And when they go see this movie, it might kind of put them off of it a bit if they're like, hey, that's not how it played out for me. So I do worry about that. Now, I do want Old Republic content, whether a show, a movie. I do want Old Republic content. I want I love the way that the Old Republic is built in those games. I think you can have elements that you take from it, nods to it that you can have. You can even have characters like Karth and Bastila show up, but just kind of staying away from the main plot of Knights of the Old Republic, I think, would be the best case scenario if you're making an Old Republic movie or show. Okay, I guess enough about that. But we already know that they have, the reason I say that, we already know they have projects for Dawn of the Jedi. We know they have projects for the High Republic. Acolyte is a High Republic show. This is also, where a lot of their books and comic focus has been recently, is in the High Republic. Fall of the Jedi, we've had a lot of stuff in the Fall of the Jedi. I think we're kind of moving on from that for a bit. Same thing with Reign of the Empire. Bad Batch was announced to have its final season. Season 3 coming up. I wouldn't be shocked if we kind of stay away from that for a bit. Age of Rebellion, of course, with those Reign of the Empire and Age of Rebellion, we do have constant comics and books coming out in that time period. So there is still stuff coming out during those time frames. The New Republic, of course, has Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, Book of Boba Fett. All of that is in the New Republic right now. Rise of the First Order, we have the sequel trilogy. Great. And then the new timeline on there is New Jedi Order. And we did get a project confirmed for New Jedi Order as well. So let me disappear this image. Okay, so that's kind of the time frame that we have listed out here. Let's kind of dive into those projects that were announced during this period. So we did have the first movie that was announced was a new movie with Rey Skywalker in it, and it is taking place in that time frame that is known as the New Jedi Order. If you have read books in the past, if you were reading the EU, the old expanded universe, the New Jedi Order was a time frame after Episode 6 where Luke and Mara Jade and Han and Leia are continuing their legacy and they're training the Jedi and all that kind of stuff. So I would assume they're going to take, I wouldn't say like the main plot from that or anything, but I'm just thinking like that's going to kind of be the basis. We already kind of know this is going to be 15 years after the end of Rise of Skywalker, and that Rey will be currently building the new Jedis during that time frame. I don't know how far along she'll be in that process, but 15 years, that gives you quite a bit of time. This was also the movie that in the last episode, back in October, when I last did the Tales of the Jedi episode, I was talking about rumors of a Damon Lindelof written film. And he left the project in, I believe, February or March. And now we have Stephen Knight, who created Peaky Blinders, is writing the rest of the script. We're taking a pass on it. And Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is going to be directing the film. She directed a couple episodes of Miss Marvel for Disney last year. So we kind of have a creative team here. We know it's the New Jedi Order. We know it's 15 years after Rise of Skywalker. And I know a question on a lot of people's mind is, can we actually believe this is happening? If we go off the list of movies that were announced and never actually happened, it's pretty long, right? You got the Benioff and Weiss series of films that were announced, they left. Rian Johnson trilogy that still hasn't happened. That's been 6 years since it was announced. We had the Taika Waititi film that was announced with no plot, and that's still apparently going. We don't know if that's actually happening. The Kevin Feige film, that's something that's happening or was happening. We'll get there later. So I understand people saying, how do we know this is actually going to happen? Well, I'll tell you what. The Patty Jenkins movie, Rogue Squadron, I'll tell you what. I think I feel more confident about these projects. I think I heard somebody say on another show or something that a listener wrote in or something and said that every project that's been announced at Celebration has gone through, and the ones that haven't were announced at another function. Now, I don't know if I put too much weight in that, because I feel like they wouldn't have announced it at another function if they really didn't think it was going to go through. Just sometimes things happen, and they end up not going through. So I do think that maybe that might be some false equivalency there, but I feel pretty confident in this movie happening. It's already got Daisy Ridley attached. We have a director. We have somebody writing the script. We know all of that information, and there's belief that in 2025 there has to be a Star Wars movie released, or else Disney is really going to maybe shake some stuff up at Lucasfilm. Now, that's a rumor. We don't know if that's true, but I could see it being true in the sense of Bob Iger is back, and Disney needs some wins. They need some wins in the box office. They need some wins overall, and Star Wars has been in a issue where they are just constantly announcing stuff and not making it, and that doesn't get you money, right? You're not making any box office if you're not getting the movie to the theaters. So I can kind of see if there is a mandate, as bad as that sounds, because that's kind of the problem that they faced themselves with originally, is when Disney announces a new trilogy in 2012 and says that's hitting in 3 years after they bought Lucasfilm. And the thing is, they didn't have even a director attached, they didn't have a writer attached, they didn't have anybody working on this movie. And then they had to put it out in 3 years. JJ was able to get them to move to December at least, which is kind of where they currently sit for all of their releases now. But it was just kind of like this that's kind of what put them behind the ball. And now you're like, well, if there's another mandate, that's probably bad. Well, if they already have some script that they like or an idea, and you have somebody, tuning up the script, that's the thing too. I see some people being like, this is a disaster because Damon Lindelof has left it and stuff like that. That happens all the time in movies. Somebody writes a script, they either move on with it or they pass it on and they get somebody else to do another pass on it. And if a lot of the Damon Lindelof stuff is there, he'll get a credit on the writing. If it's not, he won't. That's how it's going to work. Well, so it's not like when he left, it doesn't mean it was like in a state of disarray. It could just be like, I wrote as best as I could. I wasn't going to keep doing passes on it if I don't believe in it. Maybe he doesn't believe in it. And then, Stephen Knight comes in and he has a framework to work on and says, you know what, I'm going to knock this out. Apparently he has 6 weeks to get the script in, and then from there I guess they can start pre-production, and I assume this is the 2025 film. I think that's pretty simple. Well, so I do feel more confident about it because we do have a loose plot. It's about the new Jedi Order. It is starring a person. We have a director. We have a writer. That is the most we've ever had in any of these situations. Unlike when they just say, Benioff and Weiss are making a movie. And Kevin Feige's making a movie. And Taika Waititi is making a movie. We actually know a little bit about the film to say, okay, they actually have an idea. It's not like they're just handing out a movie to somebody that they think is an up-and-coming director. They have an idea for this. And that makes me a little bit more positive. One thing that is mind-blowing is in 2025, it will already have been 6 years since The Rise of Skywalker was in theaters, and will be the 10th year anniversary of The Force Awakens. Which, to me, is just mind-boggling because it doesn't feel like it's been that long. Part of it, of course, is because I am getting older, so time is relative and time is moving faster. But, man, like, kids that saw the movie when they were 5 can go see the new Rey movie in 2025, and they'll be 15. Kids that were 10 are going to be 20 when they go see this movie if it hits it in 2025. And that's absolutely mind-boggling. It's kind of the equivalent of, growing up on the prequels, and then, boom, here is some new Star Wars in your early 20s, which is what it was for me. So, 8 years ago, I was like 22, 23, seeing Force Awakens, and then, when I saw Rise of Skywalker, it was like when I saw Revenge of the Sith, I was like 13. So some of these kids are going to have that same sort of experience, and it's just hard to believe it's already been, because there was a 10-year gap between Revenge of the Sith and Force Awakens. Now, of course, it's not a 10-year gap from the last one of the trilogy, but just the fact that some of these kids would have grown up with Rey and can go see her continue her journey 10 years after it started is mind-boggling. So what do I expect to see in this movie? I don't know if Rey's supposed to be the main character or if we're going to be introduced to new characters, and we would have Rey as kind of like the Obi-Wan or the Luke Skywalker of the new movie, where she's kind of the role model or the mentor. So let's say Rey's a mentor. Like, how does that set up the rest of the story? Is there a chance we see Finn? Is there a chance we see Poe? Is there a chance? Yes, I do think there is a chance. I know John Boyega has had his difficulties with Lucasfilm and Disney with the way that they kind of mishandled Finn in the sequel trilogy, but I do think that they can right that ship, and if they can tell him that, and if they can get him on board, we could see a very interesting Finn, maybe learning to be a Jedi. They kind of hint towards his Force sensitivity in the Rise of Skywalker here. So I would love to see that. I would love to see Finn. I would love to see Poe again. But what gets me the most excited is just like kind of like this new template, this like new canvas that they can do without hopefully treading some of the same ground that we're seeing in Mandalorian and in the sequel trilogy. What I mean by that is in the Mandalorian, you know, we're dealing with Imperial remnants. I hope there's not very many First Order remnants that we're dealing with in New Jedi Order. I want us to get away from stormtroopers. I've talked about it plenty of times on here. I want us to get away from like TIE fighters, stormtroopers, X-Wings. There's way more than that to Star Wars. So I do hope that, you know, this new venture, this new movie, that there's a new threat that isn't based on the First Order, that isn't based on, it doesn't even have to be Sith, you know, just pirates, you know, people causing trouble, gangs. There's so many other things that can happen than just, oh, here's more stormtroopers. So I do hope that that is kind of where we go with it. And one thing that gets me excited too is the possibility of seeing the droids again, whether it's Dio, BB-8, R2D2, C3PO, you know, especially R2. He did not have a lot to do in the sequel trilogy, unfortunately, and R2 is like my favorite droid. You can see him behind me here on the screen. Love R2D2, so hopefully we can still see those type of characters, because I would believe that they're still around 15 years from now. You know, they've lasted so long. So that would be very exciting and really cool to see how, you know, what we can do with these characters going forward. Even if it is just Rey and a whole bunch new cast and you have just a couple of the droids, that's really cool. Just the fact that it's not going to end at the end of Rise of Skywalker, which I know some people really dislike the movie. I really enjoyed Rise of Skywalker, so I would love to just see a continuation of it. Will it be weird it's not called Episode 10? Maybe a little bit, but I think they really just kind of want to move on from the numerical ordering of things, because it does make some people, you know, feel like, man, I'm never going to catch up if there's 9 of these things. Even though, you know, it doesn't take that long to do it. But oh well. One thing they also announced is that the opening crawls are coming back, which is a win for me. I know some people think that's, you know, I do think it's okay to have some movies without the crawl, but I think it's something that is so unique to Star Wars compared to other franchises. I think leaning in on that and giving the information dump to the audience, and there's just something about it that gets you ready for what you're about to see. Like, I love Rogue One. Very jarring jumping right into that movie without the crawl. Same thing with Solo. But sitting down in the theater and watching the crawl come up as you're watching Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, you're like, yes, tell me everything I need to know. Tell me the state of the galaxy. And I think that is one of the big pluses of a crawl, is that it can give you all of the information you need without having to dump it into dialogue later. So I do think that is a positive, and I am very excited to see how they handle the crawl going forward. You know, the TV shows don't really need it. Though I'd be fine if the TV shows did, but, you know, the TV shows don't need it, is kind of what Kathleen said, and the movies should really help to differentiate them. Is you're in a movie, here's the crawl. You're on TV, you don't need the crawl. So that'd be great. Okay, so like I said, I think that's the 2025 movie. It's the furthest along. Let's move on to another movie that they announced, which was directed by Dave Filoni. And people are calling this the Mandoverse movie, the Mandalorian film. but it's really much more than that. It's supposed to be the culmination event from Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian, Disney Plus TV shows. So the big arc that is going to finish is going to now do it in theaters instead of an event on Disney Plus. And I think this is the right way to go. Grogu and the Mandalorian are such popular characters. They're selling toys like crazy. They are probably the biggest part of Star Wars right now. And to kind of, if you were to go the whole show without releasing a movie in theaters for it, I think you'd be kind of wondering what could have been, you know, because this is something that I think can really be a huge hit, a surefire hit. And I think one thing that helps as well, these characters deserve a big budget. Not saying that the show is not big budget, but they use the volume, they use, you know, green screen, they use these effects that make it, you know, like compared to TV shows now, it's like definitely a higher budget, I think, than some other shows. But they're producing it at a TV level, so of course not everything is always great. I always hear people complain about the volume and stuff, but really I do think it still looks great. I do. But just the fact that they can, with a bigger budget maybe, make it look a little bit more cinematic, which would be exactly kind of what this story probably deserves when you get to the end. Just imagine a 2.5 hour movie that probably has Mando, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, Sabine, Ezra, Zeb, Chopper, Mon Mothma, you know, all of these characters, Thrawn, Moff Gideon, maybe. Like, these are characters that can really hold a film, and how many you have to have in there. And I'm sure there will be some people that go and see it without watching the show, but I would think most people, I mean, this show is extremely popular. I would think that it's a slam dunk to go and show up and see these characters on the big screen, and it'd be everything I really want. I want to see these characters like Grogu and Mando, Bo-Katan, the Rebel characters, all of them on the big screen. I think that would be really cool. Probably some Skeleton Crew characters will be there as well, I would think. Tying up all these stories and these loose ends in one huge cinematic adventure. It would be like Avengers level for Star Wars, and I do think that would probably be a huge hit. I would hope. I think it sounds great. Dave Filoni gets to finally make his live action film. He gets to tie in his characters like Ahsoka, the Rebels characters he's created, that he's been able to put into other projects. He can have he can actually end their story in a huge live action cinematic adventure. That sounds perfect. Now, will we also see de-aged Luke, Leia, Han? It's a possibility. It is a possibility, I think. But I wouldn't be shocked if it's a no, or maybe just a quick little thing. I don't think they're going to be the focus, obviously. I think the focus is going to be on these Disney Plus characters that we've seen who are, I really think, our first look at what this will entail is either the finale of Mando Season 3 or the Ahsoka show. We'll talk about the Ahsoka trailer in a little bit, but there is a line in it where she says about heir to the Empire. Very famous expanded universe book starring Thrawn, and kind of really kicked off the expanded universe in the 90s and kind of brought Star Wars back in some consciousness in the early 90s before the prequel trilogy. It's kind of what kept it alive for a bit. How much people love those books. Well, you know, that sounds like maybe that's what it would be. Maybe it's going to be heir to the Empire story arc, but kind of retrofit it to these characters and not, Mara Jade and Luke and Leia and Han and all those characters that appear in the book version, which I'm totally fine with. I don't think we need it to be an exact one-to-one recreation. I think if you can take the good parts that you really like about the book, if Filoni's like, hey, I really like this, I'm going to take this out of there, I'm going to take this out of there, we're going to mix these things up, and I'm going to substitute this character for this character. I think that's the way it works. I mean, I don't need it to be one-on-one. I remember when, they announced episode 7, and people were like, man, do you think they'll do the books? And I immediately said no. I just think that it'd be so unfair advantage if you're a book fan. That you go into the theater and you can spoil it for people while you're there. It's supposed to be, surprising to each person in the audience, not, just the select few who didn't read the book. So I kind of do like that they didn't go with that. And I think the same thing would be here, is that it'd kind of be maybe the same plot or just a Thrawn story. So maybe they call it the thing is, how do you name it, right? Is it Star Wars Heir to the Empire? Let's say that's the name, Heir to the Empire. Is it Star Wars Heir to the Empire? Is it Heir to the Empire, a Star Wars story? Is it Star Wars The Mandalorian, the Heir to the Empire? Is it Star Wars The New Republic, Heir to the Empire? Is it just Star Wars The New Republic? What are you naming this movie is really the question I have, and how you market it. I assume the marketing would be, here's Mando, here's Grogu, here's Ahsoka, here's Thrawn. Like, they're all in it. Go see it. It's just kind of something I wonder, like, how would you do this if you were making the movie? Now, I thought this might be the 2027 movie. I thought that this might be, in 4 years, we get season 4 of Mando, which is already written, Favreau said. We get Skeleton Crew later this year. We get Ahsoka later this year. Maybe you get another season of Ahsoka, and then you build into the next, the movie, to tie it all up after season 4 of Mando. Now, some of the stuff we've heard since then, I think Jeff Snyder just said on his podcast that Mangold, who's making his Dawn of the Jedi film, is supposed to start working on that after doing his Bob Dylan biopic, but before Swamp Thing, which he's attached to for DC and James Gunn. And, when James Gunn unveiled his DC things, it pretty much went up to the year 2027 with Swamp Thing as like the last theatrical movie, 2027 or 2028. So my thought was that the Mangold one would be 2029. He would do Swamp Thing first for 2027. Then he would get in production for Star Wars and have this 2029. But Jeff Snyder says that he's supposed to do it right after the Bob Dylan biopic. So maybe right after he's done wrapping, filming, and editing and stuff, he starts writing and then go through pre-production. And maybe that's the 2027 film now, is Dawn of the Jedi. And what that gives you is 6 more years for this Mandalorian conclusion, which might give you season 4, season 2 of Ahsoka, season 2 of Skeleton Crew, or season 2 of Boba Fett, season 5 of Mando, and then you're launching into the film. So there's still quite a few seasons we can have of these Disney Plus shows before it wraps up. And even when the big arc ends with Thrawn, if that's where we're heading for the movie, that doesn't mean that the shows have to end. Mando can start doing something else. He can start having a different story arc, and you can keep the show going, because I think Favreau said there's no set end for the show. So they can wrap up the movie that ties up the big arc that is interlocking all these shows, and then you can go, all right, well, now that they're done interlocking, Mando's doing this thing over here, and we're going to continue the show. So there are possibilities on how you can do this. Let's move on from the Dave Filoni film and look at Dawn of the Jedi, the film that's going to take place in that time frame. Directed by James Mangold, he is wrapping up Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which is going to be coming out in June. Then he has a Bob Dylan biopic that he's working on. He's also attached, like we said, to Swamp Thing and this film. So I originally slotted this for 2029, but these might be switched. And it is supposed to explore the origins of the Jedi and supposed to take place 25,000 years before any of the films that we have currently. And it's telling the log line that I saw quoted in, I think, Hollywood Reporter, said, telling the tale of the first Jedi to wield the Force and harness it as a liberating power in an era of chaos and oppression. So we don't really know too much about the original Jedi. Now, of course, the picture that is on this Dawn of the Jedi here is kind of matching the Prime Jedi logo that is on the first temple on Ahch-To that Luke is staying at. Has the same sort of look here. So that might be a hint that, you know, maybe we do see some Ahch-To. It is like the first Jedi temple, but this is supposed to be about the first person who wields the Force and stuff like that. So that still might be quite a bit away. It might just be, like, I think they said kind of like a biblical epic, like Ben-Hur, like Ten Commandments, something that is huge like that. So maybe it's like the trials and, you know, tribulations of this one Force user who becomes like the first one to wield it, or the first known person to wield it. And kind of, I would assume we probably get something like the first lightsaber being built. You know, stuff where you can look back and say, you know, how do we do this? I'm not really worried about this. I do see some people that are really worried about, are they explaining too much? Will this be like midichlorians 2.0, where we kind of get too much information about something? And I don't think so. I don't think that's a big problem to have here. I am interested to see, you know, like the technology 25,000 years ago. Are we still seeing, you know, hyperspace? You know, because according to the High Republic, they can do hyperspace, but there's fewer hyperspace lanes. So, you know, then that's only a couple hundred years before the prequel. So you're thinking even further back than that. Travel between planets is probably so minimal or more risky. It's going to be something that's a little tough. Unless if it all takes place on one planet, which it could. It could all take place on like Ahch-To or another planet where he is learning how to wield the Force, and he sets out and decides to show others how to do this, and there's your film after he overcomes his issues or her issues. That is something that's a real possibility here. We don't know too much about it. I am curious about it. I think this is kind of stuff I've said I wanted in the past as well, right? I said on here, I forget when it was. I think it was after Rise of Skywalker. For the next project, I was like, I want something that's totally different, that is, you know, so different time frame, go whether far in the past or far in the future. That's what they're doing now, far in the past, and give us some different things. You know, this is a time of chaos and oppression. Who's oppressing them? Where's the chaos? Who is he sticking up for? You know, who's the Jedi sticking up for? That kind of stuff is questions I have in my head here, and so they got me hooked on that. I'll go see it, no problem. But other than that, I don't know if there's too much more we have to talk about that. That's so little information on it. The good thing about James Mangold already working with Lucasfilm, this is another reason why I'm really confident in all three of these movies. We talked about why I'm confident with the Rey film. With the Dave Filoni film, obviously, that's wrapping up the TV show arcs. Dave Filoni's been there so long. You know, that one I have the most faith in happening. And then this project, James Mangold worked with Lucasfilm, so it's not even something like, you know, where they hire Lord and Miller, who were supposed to do Solo, and then they're working with them, and they say, actually, it's not really working. They know how James Mangold is. He brought the idea to them, apparently. So, let's go, right? Let's do it. I think these are all very real possibility of happening, which is something I couldn't say about any of the other projects. But while we're talking about it, I do want to kind of share this interview that Kathleen Kennedy had, which I thought was interesting. Because I'll tell you why. So we're gonna go ahead and see if I can play this.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about kind of projects like Rogue Squadron and Kevin Feige's project. So could those still see the light of day?
Kevin Feige's project was something announced in the press, or I suppose fandom. Mm-hmm. But there was nothing ever got developed.
Right.
We never discussed an idea. We did, as everybody knows, Kevin's a huge Star Wars fan. Mm-hmm. And, if he did come up with something, I would be all ears, but that's never really happened. So
there you go. That was a very odd interview, right? Okay. So I can't find the exact clip, but there was people that were saying, that they found what StarWars.com did put an article out. That seems to be gone now. But for the Kevin Feige Star Wars project. But when it was broken by The Hollywood Reporter, Alan Horn put out an official statement. This was on September 25th, 2019, where Alan Horn says, "We are excited about the projects Kathy and Lucasfilm team are working on, not only in terms of Star Wars, but also Indiana Jones, and reaching into other parts of the company, including Children of the Blood and Bone." Actually, that was now not happening. "With the close of the Skywalker saga, Kathy is pursuing a new era in Star Wars storytelling, and knowing what a diehard fan Kevin is, it made sense for these two extraordinary producers to work on a Star Wars film together." Well, according to, and that was, Feige's and Kathleen Kennedy's boss, Alan Horn, who's in charge of, vice president of, or co-vice president of Disney Pictures. So the fact that was officially announced, and then she said that was something that was never actually real and was announced by the fandom, I don't even understand what that would mean. We can't just announce stuff, I wish I could. I wish I could just announce stuff, but we can't. So kind of weird. I'm assuming this is just something that she didn't ever want to do. Kevin Feige is now busy with more Marvel stuff, with some of the complaints that Marvel's been having, with their CGI issues that people keep harping on, though I don't really find it that much of a big deal. And, Iger talking about them slowing down. And so I'm assuming Feige is going to be too busy to even do this anyway, so it might have only happened because of that, but it does seem like Kathleen Kennedy was never interested in working with Kevin on this. So it is what it is. Just thought the interview was kind of telling with that. Okay, let's go ahead and watch this Ahsoka trailer and kind of give our reactions to it.
Something's coming. Something dark. I sense it.
This is a new beginning. For some, war. For others, power.
It's been a while. Things have changed. I started hearing whispers about Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire. We have to prepare for the worst. The Jedi fell a long time ago. There aren't many left.
perhaps it is time to begin again.
Great trailer. Really dig this trailer. It's got so many good bits in it, but we do finally see who Mary Elizabeth Winstead is playing in this film, and it is she is Hera. Kind of see her right there. There she is as Hera. We get to see live action Chopper right here, which is awesome. Love seeing Chopper. We have two new bad guys that have like an orangish blade here. We'll talk about that because Dave Filoni had some fun stuff to say about that. We see live action Sabine a few times right here. Grew out her hair. Talking to Ahsoka. We see Mon Mothma and some of the other leaders of the New Republic here. And then, of course, the back of Thrawn's head. Now, they did, show an extended trailer the next day at Star Wars Celebration where they had, like, a panel just for Ahsoka, and they did show the front of Lars Mikkelsen, who, of course, voiced the character in Rebels as well. So he's back. And they showed, like, the front of his face. They showed Sabine with a green lightsaber, which looked like Ezra's. I believe Ezra gives her his before he goes away at the end of Rebels at one point. So, yeah, there's some great stuff here. We do see hologram Ezra as well, so I'm really excited to see live action Ezra. This is just, like, as a fan of Rebels, I like Rebels more than the Clone Wars, actually. And the reason why is I felt like Rebels is a little bit more focused. You have these group of rebels. You're focused on them. You get to see their whole journey. Sometimes Clone Wars is like, and here's our 3PO and R2 episode. And here's our Jar Jar episode. And that's great. You get to see kind of new characters. You get to experience fun. But what I like is just kind of the main focus on Rebels of these are the four. It's kind of like in Bad Batch when you get to see just, all right, here's our Bad Batch. We're going to focus on them in this show. Boom. I do have to catch up on Bad Batch, by the way. I haven't watched season 2 yet. But yeah, so I really dig this Ahsoka trailer. It is gotta be my most anticipated Disney Plus show of the year. So I'm really excited for that. They did show some trailers at the convention for Skeleton Crew. There's some leaked stuff there. I'm not going to show it on here because that can get taken down. So I'm not going to do that. And there was also a trailer for Acolyte, which I'm really excited for. Skeleton Crew is supposed to be late 2023. Acolyte is 2024. We will have a Wookiee Jedi as well, played by Jonas, who played Chewbacca in the sequel trilogy. And we do have a High Republic character showing up, by the way, in the Acolyte, a character from the books and from the from the comics and stuff. And then we do have Andor season 2 in 2024 as well, which was they showed a little trailer for that, which Andor season 1 was fantastic. Really dug it. I wish I could have done weekly recaps for it. Couldn't do it. I do hope to hopefully get more consistent with it going forward. I'm going to try to do Ahsoka recaps and stuff like that. And and then we have final season of Bad Batch, which is 2024. And then apparently Tales of the Jedi season 2 is supposed to be coming out in 2024 as well. 2024 is going to be stacked with Star Wars stuff, which is great because in 2025 is when we're supposed to get the next movie. So we'll be kind of building up to some cool stuff there. What do I want to see from Tales of the Jedi? I talked about it probably a bit, I think, when we talked about season 1. I think Filoni said he's kind of stepping back to, like, you're going to let more people direct it and stuff like that. So I assume that we're going to get what I would love, even if you keep, like, the 3 episodes per character, giving us more than 6, maybe 12 16, something like that. I don't know, 15, I guess, because you can divide that by 3. And they can keep them the same short length, which were actually pretty long compared to what I was expecting when you hear the word shorts. I think it was like 15, 20 minutes an episode, pretty much. So that was pretty great. So my main thought process is, all right, I want to see different eras or different Jedi. Right? We saw Dooku. That's awesome. We saw Ahsoka. That's great. But I think for the next batch, I would love to have, like, either focusing on Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon for an episode or two. Show us Qui-Gon. Maybe again as an apprentice. We only saw him a little bit in there. Or, like, characters like Kit Fisto, Plo Koon. You know, characters that are kind of background, peripheral Jedi that we haven't seen. Or go totally off the wall with it. Give us Old Republic Jedi. Give us High Republic Jedi. Give us Luke teaching Ben. There are so many things you can do with this show. It is totally open for you to go anywhere that there's a Jedi and just give us random tales of the Jedi. So I do hope they kind of lean into that. You know, I really liked season 1, but and the fact that they were all like early prequel or mid prequel episodes. But I don't want that all the time. I don't want to then focus again on Dooku and focus again on Ahsoka in season 2, where they each get 3 episodes. Give us different characters. Give us different stories. That is my hope for the Tales of the Jedi going forward. Like I said, different eras. That'd be great. There's so many interesting things you can do, and especially without bumping into other canon materials where you're like, oh, we might be contradicting something. No, just go totally far. Do whatever you want. It should be good. I hope it's good. The villains in the Ahsoka show, by the way, with the orange sabers, are Bylan Skoll and Shin Hati. And both of those names, Skoll and Hati, apparently mean wolves in another language. I forget what language it is. But anyway, they are, Dave Filoni is a big fan of wolves, and he named them. He also said that he made it purposely orange blades, like not a full-on blood red blade, because maybe playing with your different perceptions of what these characters can be, so maybe they won't be bad Sith. We did see an actual Inquisitor in this trailer, too, with the spinning handle fighting Ahsoka with a more regular red blade, so I do wonder how that will, who these two are, what their actual role is. Is it a different hierarchy? What are they? Where are they? And why do they have orange? Are they not fully evil? Are they on their own? Are they doing their own thing? That'd be kind of cool. Stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much all the Celebration news that we covered there. I'm pretty impressed. I went like almost an hour just by myself here compared to, some of the podcasts I were listening to were like 3 hours with 2 to 3 people on there. I feel pretty good that I could get close to an hour with just myself talking. But yeah, just some real quick house cleaning stuff. If you are a fan, if you want to come on as a guest, or if you want to audition for co-hosts, I am always looking for guests and co-hosts. I put something up on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook recently as well, stating that. But, kind of looking for somebody that's really in a positive outlook of the future. I don't want to, you can dislike or like whatever stuff you like on it, but I don't just, if you're going to be on here, I don't want to just hear constant hatred on, like Disney, Star Wars, or anything like that. Trying to build a positive corner of the fan base over here. So hopefully, if you're somebody that looks at this and says, man, this all looks interesting to me and I want to talk about it and share my thoughts, we can always have you on and jump on and talk about all of that good stuff that we got going on here. But yeah, thanks for watching or listening. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at podawakens. And leave your feedback there. Reach out to me, podawakens@gmail.com. But other than that, have a great rest of your weekend, and we will catch you next time.